Hi everyone, welcome to our vlog. We are all pre-service teachers here, and today we are tackling a question that every primary biology teacher faces. Should we be at the front of the classroom, carefully explaining how a seed germinates, or should we be outside in the mud, letting the children discover it for themselves? In this video, we are going to explore two very different but powerful pedagogies. One is Rosenshine's principles of instruction, which comes from cognitive science, and the second is outdoor learning, which is rooted in the experiential learning. To help us make sense of this, we'll be using the framework by Nind and colleagues. We'll look at the contextual area where these ideas come from, the enactment area, how they actually look like in a biology lesson, and the subjective area, how they affect our students and us as teachers. By the end of this session, you'll see how these two approaches can actually work together to create a high-impact science environment. But first, let's dive into the science of learning with Rosenshine's principles. So, what exactly is Rosenshine's principles? Think of it as a GPS for effective teaching. It's a set of 10 practical strategies designed to make sure information gets from the teacher's mouth into the student's long-term memory. The core idea here is explicit instruction. In a biology context, if you are teaching the parts of a flower, you don't just hope the kids figure it out. You break it down into tiny, bite-sized steps. You model it, you practice it, and you check for understanding constantly. It's all about high success rates and reducing learning gaps before they even happen. It's structured, it's systematic, and it's incredibly effective for building foundational knowledge. Now, where does this come from? This isn't just one man's opinion. Barrick Rosenshine develops these principles by observing the most successful teachers, the ones whose students made the most progress. He combined these classroom secrets with the science of how we learn, creating a simple cognitive guide that helps every teacher explain things clearly and helps students remember more. In fact, these principles have become incredibly popular recently because schools are moving towards evidence-based teaching to make sure every child succeeds. But the why behind it comes from cognitive load theory, pioneered by John Wheeler. As biology teachers, we need to remember that our students' working memory is like a small bucket. If we pour in too much information about photosynthesis, for example, the water overflows and they learn nothing. Rosenshine's principles are designed to pour that information water slowly and steadily, so the bucket never overflows. We are moving from a contextual understanding of the brain to the enactment in the classroom. To show you what this actually looks like with a group of pupils and a box of learning materials, I'm handing over to Mia for some real-world examples.
The focus of this part is to transfer Rosenshine from a theoretical framework to the implementation of teaching in real classroom. In this case, we will see that teaching is not a one-time transfer of knowledge to students, but through clear step design, clear teacher guidance, and a continuous understanding check. Students can build understanding in a step-by-step process and gradually move toward independent cognition of tasks. In Rosenshine pedagogy, classes often begin with a review of old knowledge. This section aligns with Rosenshine's principle. New learning depends on the successful retrieval of prior knowledge by using simple plan diagram and direct question. The teacher guides students to recall the name and functions of rose, stem, and leaf. Rather than just asking questions, the teacher provides visual clues and scaffolding to help students recognize fragmented memories. This ensures students are not entering adaptation on paper rate, but are transitioning smoothly after their existing understanding activated. In Rosenshine, new content is often not taught all at once, but presented in two small steps. For example, the teacher may first focus on one new feature and help students notice what it looks like. Then the teacher explains what this feature does and how it helps the plant survive. In this way, teachers do not just notice a trait, they begin to understand the link between the feature and the survival. Some students may quickly notice that the leaves are sick, but not yet understand why that matters. So the teacher needs to break the examination into smaller, clear steps. During this process, the teacher will use short questions to keep checking whether students are flowing. For example, the teacher may pause to ask short questions about what the feature does and how it helps the plan survive. These questions are not only used to check recall, but also see whether students really understand the link between the feature, function, and adaptation. Some students may ask a basic question, while others may ask a future question. So this part is not a one-way examination, but a process of checking and refine understanding through interaction. In this stage, the teacher first modes the thinking process, showing how to move from a planned feature to its function, and then to its role in survival. This means students see not just the answer, but how the thinking develops. Next, students try a new example through guided practice. At this point, many still needs support, so the teacher continues to provide prompts and guidance. So the focus here is not full independence, but practicing with support and gradually building a secure understanding. The purpose of this part is to show that the teacher checks students' understanding and uses feedback to improve accuracy and maintain a high success rate. In this part, the teacher does not stop just because the student has given an answer, but checks whether the student has really understood the idea. If the answer is still unclear, the teacher follows up or corrects in a strict way, and helping the students make it more precise. In this way, checking and feedback help students correct mistakes earlier and move forward with a high level of success. At the end of the lesson, students complete a short task to revisit the core idea. This might be a matching task, naming an adaptation, or explaining in one sentence how a feature helped the plan survive. This is not just a repetition, but a way of going over the logic of feature, function, and survive again. It also helps the teacher see whether students really understand the concept or have only memorized the answer. Some students may work independently, while others may still need oral support or simpler prompts. The learning can also be extended after class, for example, by asking students to explain one planned adaptation to a parent.
Hi everyone, Mia had shown us Rosenshine in a real biology classroom, but as training teachers, we need to go further, not just how it works, but why and where it may fall short. As Bowen said before, one key strength is that it acts as a cognitive GPS, managing working memory by breaking complex ideas into clear, manageable steps. With moduling and vocabulary scaffolds, students can succeed before moving to independent work. However, there is a risk of echo chamber teaching. Under curriculum pressure, checks for understanding may be rushed, leading to rote answers rather than real understanding. If scaffolds are not removed in time, students may also become too dependent on teacher support. This leads to an important point. Learning is not just internal processing. Biology is about interacting with the real world, which is why we now turn to outdoor learning. Now let's step out of the classroom. While Rosenshine focuses on the internal processing of the brain, outdoor learning is a place-based pedagogy. It's all about biology back to where it belongs, the natural world. For us, as science teachers, this means using the school garden, a local park, or even a crack in the pavement to teach about ecosystems and life cycles. The core idea is experiential learning. Children learn by doing, by touching, and by observing real-world contexts. It develops not just biological knowledge, but also student agency, independence, and a literal feeling for the environment. The roots of this approach go way back. Think of Friedrich Froebel, the father of the kindergarten, which literally means children's garden. He believed children should be active learners who grow through interaction with nature. Later, theorists like David Kolb gave us the experiential learning circle. He argued that learning starts with a concrete experience, like finding a worm in the soil, followed by reflection and then conceptualization. In terms of the contextual dimension of the named framework, outdoor learning has surged in popularity recently. as a reaction against our indoor screen-based culture. It's a way to foster inclusion and well-being. But how do you actually manage a biology lesson in the wind and rain? Again, Mia is going to take us through the practicalities and the subjective experience of students.
Outdoor learning puts more emphasis on students' learning through direct experience. The focus of this part is not to first explain the concept directly by the teacher, but to let the students first discover the problems from the environment. By observing the real plants, comparing differences, and entering the study with a guiding question, the outdoor space itself becomes a part of the learning. In outdoor learning, teacher also needs to give students a clear focus of observation. For example, in this plant class, the teacher will first draw students' attention to different environmental conditions, such as sunny, shade, or near wall area, and guide them to start comparing the differences of plants through questions. In this way, students are not looking at random, but observing with tasks. Some students are quickly to start comparing different plants, but without a clear question. They may also pay attention to superficial things and ignore cues related to adaptation. Next, students enter the stage of observation and exploration. They will have direct contact with real environment, carefully observe physical characteristics of plants, and compare the growth of different plants under different conditions. At this stage, students gather information through direct observation. They pay attention to visible features of the plant, such as thick leaves, dry soil, or whether the plant grows near shade. What students learn here is that they first see the difference and begin to compare the relationship between the environment and the plants. Comparison is an important part of outdoor learning. By observing plants in different locations, students begin to notice that there may be certain patterns between environmental conditions and plant characteristics. Some students will start asking questions at this step, such as why these plants grow better in this place and why the leaves look different. But for some students, although they can see the difference, but they cannot immediately explain what the difference means. At this stage, the teacher will support students' learning by conducting questions. The students may at first just say what he sees, such as thick leaves, but the teacher will continue to ask what this might mean or what the role of the feature might have. In this way, the problem is not isolated from the scene, but grows naturally from the observation, helping students slowly move from description to explanation. For some students, without such prompts, they may remain superficial without further thinking about the relationship between these traits and survival. Through discussion, students will slowly transform observation into explanation. For example, they might notice that certain plants grow in drier area and have thicker leaves, and they try to speculate that this trait might help store water. In this way, the explanation is not an abstract concept that suddenly appears but grows step by step from concerted observation and discussion. Of course, different students enter the explanation at different speeds. Some students will put forward their own speculation relatively quickly, while some students still need the teacher to continue to inquire and help them connect the feature and function. In this step, the teacher will help the students to recognize the outdoor observation into a clear conceptual understanding. For example, students say that plants grow in different environments and show different, and the teacher further teach them to associate this finding with adaptation, habitats, and survival. In this way, concepts are not suddenly added from outside, but are slowly refined from what the student has already seen and discussed. Of course, different students connect observation back to subject vocabulary at different rates. So some students may already be able to use these concepts with some confidence, while others still need help connecting observational evidence to keywords. At the end of the course, students can organize their observation and understanding with a short output task. This task does not have to be a normal worksheet, but can be more like a field notebook, such as writing down where the plant was found, what features was noticed, and what is the feature might help the plants do. Such tasks both preserve the sense of observation of outdoors learning and make it easier for a teacher to see if students are actually translating observation into explanation. At the same time, different students may have different way of experiencing their understanding. Some students can record independently, while others may be more suitable for oral explanation or complete it with the help of sentence structure prompts. Such tasks can also be attended to families, such as having students go home and share a planned observation with their parents and explain how the feature might help the plan survive. So learning doesn't just stay in classroom, but continues to be connected to the everyday environment. Overall, this example is more suited to primary pupils because both Rosenshine and outdoor learning in this lesson involve a high level of teacher guidance and structural support. However, both pedagogies can still be adapted for older age groups, where students can work more independently and engage in a deeper inquiry.
Thanks, Mia, for that great demonstration. It's clear that when learning moves beyond the four walls of the classroom, the entire dynamic of the lesson changes. Up until now, we have discussed the Rosenshine's principles, a highly structured approach that is incredibly efficient, but can sometimes feel limited to internal mental processing. Outdoor learning, however, offers us a completely different perspective. Embodied cognition. Now, let's step into the school garden. Outdoor learning offers embodied cognition. When students touch the damp soil to find a fern, biology becomes a lived experience, not just a list of nouns. Mia's use of felt notebooks with the sentence prompts is the bridge that completes Cobb's experiential learning cycle, turning a simple walk into deep scientific reflection. Practically, the management cost is huge. Trainees often fear losing control or damaging the environment, and graphical reality means a sudden rainstorm can ruin the lesson plan. It requires a high level of adaptive expertise to handle the randomness of the outdoors. After evaluating the pros and cons, we must address the most critical question in education: inclusion and equity. As we have seen, no pedagogy is a master key that fits every child. Now, let's shift our lens to see who these methods support and who they might accidentally leave behind. With Rosenshine, the predictable structure provides a vital safety net for ICND students and anxious learners. However, we must watch for the ceiling effect, where rigid steps might stifle high achievers. Also, without heavy visual support, EAL students can still feel marginalized by the verbal heavy instruction. Outdoor learning, on the other hand, is a sanctuary for kinesthetic learners by allowing oral explanation instead of writing. We remove barriers for students with dyslexia, but we must also acknowledge the invisible walls. Sensory overload for students on the autism spectrum and socioeconomic barriers for those without the right gear. Even Mia's home extension tasks risk widening the gap for students with less support at home. Through our presentation, we have analyzed the two core biology teaching approaches: Rosenshine's structured instruction and outdoor embodied learning, through the lens of Nine's three core dimensions. First, contextual. We compared how classroom and nature environment shape learning experiences. Then, enactment, we explored hands-on embodied practice to boost student engagement. And finally, subjective. We centered students' lived experiences to build truly inclusive biology education. This framework guides us to balance structure and exploration for every learner. In biology education, there is no one-size-fits-all pedagogy. When we need to build a solid foundation of knowledge and manage complex concepts, the structured safety net of Rosenshine is essential. However, when we aim to ignite curiosity and build students' agency, the embodied drive of the outdoor is replaceable. Our challenge as training teachers is to find the balance between structure and exploration, depending on our students' needs and the lesson's goals. By breaking down the walls between the classroom and the nature world, we can create a biology environment that is truly inclusive and inspiring for every learner. Thank you for listening, and that concludes our group presentation.